Board meeting to order. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us tonight. There are 2 sign-up sheets inside the door back there. There will be 2 opportunities for you to address the board. One will be before we vote on agenda topics, and the other opportunity to address the board would be at the very end. In both situations, you do need to sign up on the back on the clipboards. Okay? All right, Dr. Bracco, we are going to move right ahead to the agenda with the approval, deletions, and additions.
So you have a revised board agenda at your workstation. There are revisions under Roman numeral 7A-G, my section, 7B1, Mr. Gandolfi, 7C1, Mrs. Shaw, and 7D1 and 2, Mrs. Castaneda. Everything else is the same as what you received last week.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? All right, motion carries. And Mrs. Lesentine, any correspondence?
I have no correspondence at this time.
All right, and liaison committee updates. And Mr. Marshall?
Nothing to update at this time. The Westlake meeting will be later this month. I have forgotten the exact date. It's on a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken.
It's not on my calendar, so
Okay.
we will update the board at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
It's the 27th on my, I think that's what you announced.
Okay.
That's probably
Does that
right.
sound
It
right?
should be the last Wednesday of the month, but I'll confirm that.
Thank you.
Anything for personnel, Mr. Marshall?
No, there's
Okay.
nothing to report in that regard.
All right, very good. And Mr. Marsh, or Mr. Baxago,
Um,
Dyer Parks.
Dyer Parks and Dyer Redevelopment Committee both meet next week, later part of next week.
Okay. All right, and Mrs. Suze.
Nothing for the St. John Redevelopment Committee, but for Dollars for Scholars, the tickets for the homecoming dance, which is themed Club Blue, which is semi-formal, went on sale last night till the 11th, and it's on September 23rd from 6 to 10.
Cool.
Didn't say anything on it.
All right, very good. And nothing for St. John redevelopment, you
No,
said?
nothing.
Okay. And Mrs. Lesentine?
The Cherville redevelopment meeting is next week on the 13th. So
Okay.
no update since the last one.
Very good. I have nothing on wellness. I think that we have a meeting coming up next week. Lake Central Education, I want to encourage anyone who would like to be a member of that organization to come on board. We're going to do a new project this year. We're going to be a partner with some of the local high school students that are going to host the first Science Olympiad competition at Lake Central. So it would be great to have some of you come on board and help us with that. And Mrs. Talent is probably the person to contact if you're interested in that. We're always looking for donations, or if you want to be a member, that would be great also. And legislative, just knowing that we will be meeting with our legislators sometime in the future. So as you come across concerns, ideas, start jotting them down, because they have asked for us to give them our questions in advance so they would be prepared. Okay? All right, I think that's it. Thank you. And moving on to official school board business topics consent agenda.
Thank you. Seek board approval for the minutes from our board meeting on August 21st, and seek board approval of claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures that you received last week.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Or any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries. All right, Jeannie, are there any public comments regarding agenda? No. Action items? Okay. And the official school board business topics, Dr. Bracco.
Okay, the first item on my regular agenda is to seek board approval for A through I, which are policies that we spoke of at our most recent work sessions the last couple times. And then there are a couple that are in there that we had put on the side. For instance, the mentor program policy. When we adopted Neola originally, we didn't have a mentor program, but we knew eventually we would. We're just now getting around to putting it into policy, but we have obviously a well-articulated administrative reg on how we do that program, as you already know. So anyway, we'll go through numerically and alphabetically. So A is policy 2220, and at our work session, we agreed that we did not want students to be graded on punctuality. We wanted to give students grades based on their learning and the assessments that we do related to learning the content. And so that last paragraph will be stricken when it gets updated onto our site.
But we also stated that the punctuality could be addressed in the classroom syllabus, or syllabi, right?
It is addressed through a behavior management plan
Okay,
already.
so we're covered.
Number 2421, I guess I'm jumping out of order here, but
2272, college and universities. Where are you going now?
Are we gonna take action on each individual
I
policy?
do
You want to do each one?
Or do you wanna do it all at the end?
Okay,
It's up to you.
go ahead.
All right,
Okay.
so Dr. Rocco has presented policy 2220, adoption of courses of study.
And I'd like to make a motion approving that adoption of courses of study.
Second.
All right, are there any questions, concerns? All right.
All in favor?
Hmm?
All in favor?
No, I'm just thinking about these two big words here. How do we determine the educational needs of all students? But I'm not gonna go there tonight because we've got the budget to do tonight, so we'll pass on that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries. Thank you. All right, Dr. Bracco.
The second one is Board Policy 2271, and in the second paragraph, it used to say the board will allow students in grades 11 and 12, and now it says in grades 9 through 12 in advanced placement courses and dual credit, possibly.
Okay,
Move to approve.
Second?
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. The third one is Board Policy 2421. We changed the word from vocational to career technical education program. And in the third paragraph, there was a couple words missing, so now it says a career technical education program will offer opportunities that may include. You have that highlighted on your copy.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. Policy 2510, adoption of textbooks, second to last paragraph rather. We changed it to read an advisory committee of professional staff members at all appropriate levels. So we had previous language included parents participating, and we changed it to just professional staff members.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Are there any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. Policy 3125 did not exist before, so this has been sitting in a folder, but we do have the mentor program. You've seen parts of that before this board in the past, and we just want to include it since we have it.
So, go ahead.
Move to approve?
Second.
And I can't find mine now. Yeah, thank you. Very good. Are there any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. Policy 3130, assignment and transfer. The last paragraph or sentence, when appropriate, the procedure shall be in accordance with the terms of employment. It used to say collective bargaining agreement, and how we are going to do transfers is in our terms of employment for certified personnel.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Policy 3131, reduction in force. In the second paragraph, there are a number of reasons for doing a reduction in force. I have added fiscal reasons as it's highlighted on your thing. We also changed a word in the fourth paragraph to Office of Educator Licensing and Development, which is what they call themselves at the IDOE now. And then most of these pieces A through F that are highlighted existed before. They're just in a different order now. If you recall,
Right.
the old policy had seniority as the #1 marker for doing a reduction in force. And now we're following A through F as listed in this revised policy.
Move to approve.
Second?
Right, we have a motion and a second for policy 3131. Are there any questions, concerns? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. Board Policy 3231, outside activities of staff. We wanted to clarify in D, under the first section, that staff members may not accept fees for tutoring when tutoring is conducted during the normal work day or any time on school property unless a proper application for facility use has been completed and submitted. So that was not explained as well as we wanted it to be, and that is our practice.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on policy 3231. Are there any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. And finally, Board Policy 6423 is another policy that we did not have before, because when we switched to Neola in 2011 or 10, we did not have a credit card. And so I will, if possible, change the title on this to use of credit card, because we only have one. And then the rest of the policy as written is how we conduct business.
So moved?
Second.
Are there any questions? So we will just continue with the one credit card, and that's it, because this does talk plural, and that kind of went, ooh.
Well, it doesn't talk plural in the language, remember?
Oh, see, the one that, this one does. No. Yeah, okay. So
No,
see, I
I
get,
don't have that.
yeah, I got this off the email today, or the website.
I have a card there. Well, the credit card is not to be used to bypass the accounting system. The credit card.
Yeah,
Oh, well, if you're looking at the old,
yeah, I got that. Where did you get this? Did you send that out to us?
this is the one that got scanned into your board packet.
Oh, okay.
That, I don't even know where you got that, because we don't have that yet. We don't have that policy.
Right.
Anyway, it will be singular in our policy.
6423, the use of credit cards.
The title, I admit that the title still had plural.
Right, 6423 though. I thought you just said we didn't have that policy.
We
No,
didn't.
that was,
Oh, this is brand new.
right.
Call for vote on 60.
I don't know where I got it from, but I got it from somewhere on the website.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll get those updated and put the ball in Neola's court, and when they get those updated, I'll let you know.
Very good.
Thank you.
Professional leave requests, I have 2, and one is for myself and 4 board members to attend the ISBA conference October 2nd and 3rd. Details are in your packet.
Second.
Sorry, Cindy.
We have a motion and a second?
Yes, Cindy, Don.
Oh, okay. All right, any questions?
There was a teacher added to that also.
There is. Thank you, Howard.
Oh, yes.
Details
Don't
as
forget
submitted.
Louise.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
And then I'm going to ask for approval on my attending the One Region, One Vision luncheon. And anybody else who wants to go, we have time yet to bring it back to the next meeting. But seek board permission for myself to attend that luncheon.
Move to approve the One Region annual luncheon.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
So I'll wait to register until about Thursday. If anyone else wants to attend, let me know and I'll.
What was the date
add
on
you.
that, Larry?
It's just right after you get back from India, around the
It's
6th or
the
so.
Thursday after we come back. I
October
believe.
5th.
Yeah, October.
5, 10, 5.
October
Oh,
5th,
I
yeah.
can't do that day.
She's gonna have to let me know tonight, but as soon as you can.
Okay.
And then I'll just add to the next board agenda. And then my final item tonight is to just give the board an update on this Indiana graduation rate and diploma pathways advisory group. As I told you earlier this summer, we're worried about dual credit and wringing our hands over that, but this graduation rate thing has got us spooked now, probably even to a greater degree. Remember that under ESSA, the way Indiana currently defines diplomas, our state and local graduation rate that they use to give us a letter grade is going to drop. And so it becomes an important issue for us, one that I will certainly create a lengthy question for our legislators when they come to see us at the end of the month. Remember, that rate is based on the diploma earned by the preponderance of students, or any diploma that is more rigorous than that diploma that most of your kids get. So for us, that's Core 40. For us, we would lose about 6.8% off our graduation rate, and it's troubling to me that we would self-inflict any kind of a wound that would make it look like somehow we're not graduating as many students as we were before, when it's really just some nomenclature that's going to trip you up. Anyway, the new news here is that the recent Pathways Advisory Group meeting, they had some really good discussion. I was not there, but I read the minutes from the meeting, and there were many people saying that employers who are looking for students who are high school graduates with other minimal training are much more interested in soft skills and Algebra 2 mastery. There were other people who said an industry certificate along with a general diploma is more important than a student learning Algebra 2, because for what we're hiring them for, they may not need the Algebra 2. And so one of the good ideas that they came up with was to go to a point system where you give students points for other various activities, like an industry certificate, or whatever, work keys, or a number of different things that we can measure stuff. And then Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jennifer McCormick, said, well, maybe we should have a Core 40A and a Core 40B. Core 40A makes you go through Algebra 2. Core 40B would allow you to get through geometry, and then 2 other semesters of an elective math class, and then follow the pathway that you want to follow into your career. So it's one of the board to know. It's good for me to see. They're going to meet several more times, but I'm appreciative to the Superintendent of Public Instruction focusing on something that has us concerned and jumping on it before it becomes a big problem for us in the spring of 18, because it's, to be honest, before you know it.
It's true.
Any
Larry,
questions?
With the opposite side of the graduation rate, or I guess kids not graduating, does the state give us any credit for kids who graduate with extra credits, or like my kids are juniors, they only need 2 credits to graduate right now, but they're still going to go through their senior year. Do we get any credit for kids that graduate early or graduate with so many additional credits than what they actually need, or has anyone ever brought that up to the state?
Well,
I'm sure we've got a lot of kids in that situation.
yeah, I don't think it's a function of wanting to say how good your graduates are. This is just a measurement of how many people get which kind of diploma. But when they're going to follow the federal law, and the federal law is saying you have to change the way you do business, it seems to me we would look to other states who have chosen not to punish themselves and either look to combine the ways in which they did it or to pick one of them. We are notorious in Indiana for loving what Florida does with testing. Well, why can't we love what somebody else does, on this? That our original eval came from a combination of Florida and Colorado and all this stuff. So we can look to other people who have said, we're not going to just change the definition and all of a sudden drop our graduation rate. So there are solutions out there. Employers, colleges, universities, still have plenty of opportunity to differentiate the preparedness of students. We all know that. Trying to do something to reduce, it's really an artificial reduction, in my opinion, anyway. So I do think that this group's along the right path of looking what other people have done and saying, we need to either combine some of these ideas or pick one of them, and I think it will happen. So that was actually good news, in my opinion. It was a positive.
Any other
And
questions?
when the state superintendent's involved, you get the feeling that it's going to be a point of emphasis with their department, and something will get done.
So who's on this committee? Just various representatives from at the
This
state?
particular advisory group, because they don't have any juice, they're going to report to the State Board of Ed. So it was superintendents and principals.
All right, so that would be my next question. Who will make the final decision?
State Board of Ed.
So it doesn't have to go to the government legislators?
Currently, it doesn't.
Okay,
Currently, the State Board of Ed will make a decision.
okay. I like the idea that you have, like they use at the university, where they just give the one diploma and then there's different specializations that you have.
That's too easy.
Well, that's true.
Thank
No, any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, and Mr. Gandolfi?
Thank you. I only have one item this evening, saving time for Mr. James' presentation.
I know.
And that is to seek your approval for the personnel recommendations that are in the revised packet.
Move to approve.
Second.
Are there any questions? I have to say to you, I was really impressed to see all these bus drivers you hired and the aides. That's good. There's some corporations down around Lafayette, even find bus drivers to drive their routes. It's a big problem, so.
Well, you know, when we implemented our own training program a few years ago.
Any other-
And when the state superintendent's involved, you get the
It's
feel.
gone up
Yeah.
since then. And we recruit our own now, so, you know, we not only train, but then we help them prepare for the test. So it's a much better system than what we had previously.
Yeah, because they're having some major problems throughout the state of Indiana with that. And I just have got to say that I love seeing that you've hired one of my former Bibbage students as a science teacher at Lake Central, Daniel. It's pretty cool. Dr. Rocco was telling me.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. Any questions for Mr. Gandolfi? Okay. Wait, did we have a motion and a second yet?
And we did, I believe.
We did? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries. All right, and Director of Primary Education.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval of the professional leave requests that were included in the packet and the revised packet.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
My next item is to seek your approval of the field trip request that was included in your packet.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the field trip requests. They're going to go somewhere different this year, huh?
Yes,
Cool. I don't think they've ever done any.
pumpkin patches.
Okay, I figured it was, just a different name, huh?
Yes.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Thank you. And for my final item, I just wanted to give you a brief update on the high ability program. As I shared with you in the spring, the broad-based planning committee met on May 25th. And at that meeting, we discussed the results of the program audit that we had just been through and received their final report. The committee looked at the suggestions for improvement and prioritized what we thought we should work on first, and that those turned into our goals for this year. Since that meeting, we've already made some progress, even though we really didn't have much time in session after that. But Sarah worked with the middle school high ability teachers and on waivers, and they agreed with the consultants that wavering in students does adversely affect the rigor and challenge in those classes. So we have done away with waivers. But we also made some adjustments to our testing schedule. Prior to this year, we tested in kindergarten, second, and fourth. After this year, the 2017-18 school year, we will test in kindergarten, second, and fifth. So students will have that middle school chance to qualify for high ability. That's more in line with what other corporations do, and as I said, I will give students a chance to qualify in middle school. Sarah also worked with the middle school high ability teachers to review their curriculum for the challenge that those students need. This summer, some of the high ability teachers in the middle school went to a workshop that was sponsored by the Department of Ed. The state has developed high ability units in language arts for those students, and they went down to take a look at them and learn more about them. This year they are going to pilot them in each of the grade levels, 5, 6, 7, and 8. They will continue this year to, as they implement those, to look at their curriculum and review and revise it. In an effort to improve communication about the program, we added third grade parent night, and this is in addition to the first grade high ability parent night, and then the evening that Sarah puts together for parents of students who will be taking algebra in 7th grade. So this summer we did have a third grade parent night also, just trying to get more information out there. We have a broad-based planning committee meeting scheduled on October 19th, and we'll review our goals and plans for meeting them, and I will also share student achievement data for our high ability students at that time. And sometime this fall, I'll be bringing that same data to the board to share with you. Any questions?
One of my questions for the high ability would be, now that your first group of Algebra 7th graders are juniors, have you surveyed them at all to find out how they're feeling about having started algebra in 7th grade, if they feel it's advantageous, if they're dropping out, if they're still in the high ability, things like that?
We have not. We can certainly pull data on the students that took it in 7th grade if they are still in a high ability class, and
We actually do track that already.
I would just recommend talking to some of those kids. With talking to some of those kids that I've talked to, it's kind of interesting to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to leave it at that and say you may want to talk to some of those kids.
Okay.
It's very interesting to hear what they have to say.
Are you going to tell us too? No. So my question would be, you said that the middle school worked on the curriculum and they went to a DOE conference that was just on language arts. Was there one on math, or?
They have not released those units yet.
I'm sorry?
They're supposed to release them soon.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
There's, they are working on, the state's working on units for math.
Oh,
Right now,
I
they
see.
just have the language arts
I see.
released, and that's what they went to.
Okay, okay. And the third grade parent meeting would be for parents whose students were already in the program, correct?
Both, because we test again in 2nd grade.
Mhm.
We have some students that are new to the program.
Okay.
So the meeting was for them, but we also invited parents of the students that were already identified. Maybe they missed it, maybe it's good to hear it again, maybe they have more questions since their students were in there for 2 years. So it was for all of them.
Okay.
But we did it in 3rd grade because we do identify new students.
Yeah, okay.
I
Well-
thought of I apologize.
No, you go ahead.
I thought of another piece of data that I would kind of like to see, and that would be again, that group that started with the 7th grade algebra. I'd like to know how their SAT scores rank through, as a pullout, are they higher than other kids? Are they pretty much the same as other kids with this being their SAT year? And the reason I'm asking that is with them being so much far advanced, and with SAT being part of algebra, passport to algebra, and that, those statistics, I'm just curious, what are their scores compared to others? So I'd kind of like to see how they're faring this year.
Well, we'll do the PSAT and MSQT with those students in this fall. But we
Correct.
won't do the SAT schooling until April.
Right, whichever one, you know what I mean? I'm just curious,
Sure.
are those kids outscoring still? Are they in that, where are they falling? That's it for me.
Anybody else have questions? I guess I get a little bit confused by the high ability. At the middle school level, what is there like in language arts? Is there a high ability language arts?
They call them advanced, but advanced classes. So if there's an advanced 7th grade math, there's an advanced 7th grade language arts. It would be the high ability title that they do with them.
Okay, so it's called advanced at the middle school. And
It's
then
just
if you're not in the advanced, you're in a general track? Okay. And then what happens when you go to the high school then?
At the high school then, in our freshman level courses, it's mostly the honors courses, and then once that AP or dual credit offering becomes available, then those take over as the advanced classes or the high ability classes.
So again, it's the same, either you're in the high group or you're in the general track. Is that correct? Am I understanding
The
correctly?
regular courses, yes.
Okay, okay. Nothing in between? Okay. All right. It's changed a lot. I just want to make sure I had an understanding of what you were talking about. Are there any other questions? All right, thanks for sharing. And moving on to Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking your approval on the professional leave request as presented.
So, oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And motion carries.
Thank you. And for my second item, I am seeking your approval for the field trip request at the secondary level.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second for the field trip request, and some very rich and outstanding opportunities, and I just hope all the children are able to attend. I know, I see the cost of these, I'm going, oh my gosh, but great opportunities. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
And then for my last item, in your board packet, you received the middle and high school class sizes broken down by some grade levels and departments. For the middle school, you received the class sizes for the 5th grades, as well as for the 4 core academic areas, language arts, math, science, and social studies at each middle school. We've been doing pretty good with our middle school class sizes. We have a couple of schools like Kaler where sometimes the class sizes tend to look a little bit like a roller coaster, a little up one year, down the next year, and so we always try to balance that out as best we can with staffing. Any questions on the middle school class sizes?
Any questions? I'm surprised to see that Kaler is so low in math with their, that's nice, class size.
We did go down in a couple of areas, but because of our math scores, we wanted to try to maintain that as long as we could.
I wanted, yeah, okay.
I was gonna say, why are those lowered? Is there an extra teacher there that spreads out those classes?
So last year we did make a reduction at Kaler of 1 staff member, and then we were able to split 1 staff member between science and social studies. And so at math, it would have been going down a whole person, and that would have pushed the class sizes to right near 30, which again, given our math scores, we want to make sure we keep those class sizes low. So they are a little bit lower than the other middle schools, but given that's a target area of ours, we felt that that was important. And we'll continue to keep an eye on that every year to look at our numbers to see what we need.
Are any of the middle schools Title I schools?
No.
No, okay.
At the high school, if you look at the next page, you see the class sizes broken down by departments with the department average, and then also by each subject area, including the electives. We also include the world language department in that as well. At the high school level in the English department, they do try to keep the English 10 classes a little bit lower because that's the year that the graduation ISEP exam is in, as well as in the comp classes because that tends to be the heaviest in terms of reading writing. So you see a little bit higher class sizes in English 11. Our junior class actually is our largest group at 833 students. We did have several move-ins in that area, and so Mr. Bagley always works hard to keep those class sizes down, but that one is a little higher than we'd like to see our English classes. For the rest of the classes, with the exception of some popular electives in social studies, we were able to keep class sizes fairly low for our high school. With anatomy and physiology, in that instance, we had the option of splitting it into one more section. However, the teacher of that class wanted to keep the 2 larger class sizes because that would have involved bringing in another staff member, splitting lab equipment and things like that. And so she felt it was in the best interest to keep those class sizes larger. So that was at the teacher's request as we tried to problem solve through that situation. Any other questions?
I guess my only question or concern would be with the AP English 12 being 24.8, and we've got 30 in English 11, and 25.5 in English 10, and 26.1 in 9. I guess my question is, why is I would think an AP class could handle 30 kids more than a English 9 or an English 11. I mean, English 11, that's our SAT here, and we've got 30 kids sitting in those classes.
Agreed. Sometimes we have students voting with their feet at the last minute, so you build a certain number of sections and then students change their mind that senior year, and so you have class sizes going down. The other thing to consider is the periods that they can offer the classes. Sometimes if there's a lock, then it's difficult to move.
Where's the AP English 11?
Uh,
Are they included in the AP English 12?
no, I must have left that one off. I can bring that back to the next board meeting.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that number as well, please.
My apologies.
No, that's okay. I didn't know, I thought actually that they were included in the 12th class. I didn't know if it was combined.
No, one's language and comp and one's lit and comp. There's different
Okay.
courses.
That'd be my only main concern. But then again, looking at the social studies
Yeah,
department,
it's
theirs
real
is
high.
large as well, so. I guess my concern is more if you've got an AP or an honors level, I would think those would be the numbers where you're higher, because those kids have those study skills and what they need.
Valid point.
But thank you for the information. Very nice.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And Director of Special Ed.
For my first item tonight, I'm seeking your approval on the professional leave requests that were included in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
And my second item is just to provide the board with an update on a training that Mr. Gandolfi and I provided last week to all of our principals, assistant principals, and deans. It was related to Section 504, which is a piece of the Americans with Disabilities Act that is intended to provide equal access and prevent discrimination against individuals with disabilities. And as Mr. Gandolfi explained during our training, it was originally intended to protect people in the workforce and in the public sector. This is the law that led to curb cutouts and handicap accessible restrooms and things like that. But it has pushed down into our schools. So similar to IDEA and the requirements for students with special education, it does impact students with disabilities, but Section 504 casts a much wider net than our special education law does. So we ran through some information with the principals and deans related to our legal responsibilities as a district, how to identify students and evaluate their need for plans, and really helping the administrators to understand what qualifies as a disability under Section 504. We talked through the resources available to help and really emphasize that we need to blur the lines between special education and general education and look at all of our resources.
Excuse me, would you say that again?
Blur the
That is
lines
such a
between
dramatic change from
general
years ago.
and special education.
Oh my gosh, I love
Yes.
it.
So we
I
talked
love
about
it.
the available staff in buildings and how they can help the administrators gather that information they need. And then really probably the biggest piece of it was allowing the administrators time to ask questions. And for us as a group, you know, to have them all in one place and for them to be able to talk about scenarios and things they've encountered in their own buildings, and you know, brainstorm on how to handle those. So I think it was time well spent. It's a topic we'll have to continue. We have revisited multiple times and we'll continue to revisit. But hopefully they all found it helpful and we were able to resolve some issues for them.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'm going to throw something out, and I don't need an answer tonight, but I promised you that I would stay on you about help in the classrooms, parapros, instructional aides, whatever we want to call them. And so, I mean, I do love to hear that you are saying the lines need to be blurred, because that's exactly how it should be. And oh boy, do I remember those days of battling because people didn't want to do that. But yet again, at the same time, when you add that extra responsibility to the parapros or the classroom teachers, then sizes go up, and we have large class sizes in the high school too, and I don't know who, and I don't need an answer tonight, but I just want to make sure that we are doing our very, very best that we can to get the appropriate support staff at all those levels, where the instruction is actually taking place, be it at the elementary or the middle school or the high school, because that is so important. And
I can help.
you can help. He's the
Siri
man
has
with all the
the
money.
answers.
He can help.
There's the help you asked for.
There you go. So thank you, Dr. Marco, I appreciate that.
Anytime.
Just ask Siri.
Yeah, just wanted to get it out there because it's so important.
Yes.
And we understand funds are limited, but as we make priorities and decisions. All right, thanks for sharing that. Any questions? All right, moving on to Directors of Facilities, and he is not here tonight. So we will move on to Mr. Marino.
My only item is to seek your approval for the professional leave requests that were included in your packet.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries. Thank you. Guess who's up? The man of the night.
Relax, relax. Before we talk about 2018 budget, the first item on my agenda is to seek your approval for me to attend the IASBU Board of Director meetings throughout the 2017-2018 school year. Last week, I was elected as the new Region 1 Director for IASBO, and that will require me to go to the 4 quarterly meetings, the first of which is this Thursday. And all expenses are paid by IASBO, my travel expenses and hotels, so there'll be no cost to the corporation. So I seek your approval on that professional leave request.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? Congratulations on receiving that honor, and all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, you have our support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, it's this time of the year. It's budget season.
This is
He
Susan,
is
Oh,
putting
you have an assistant.
Oh,
made
yeah.
arrangements.
You don't have Bill helping you out this time.
It's okay. I trust the real tech department. So I have handed out a copy of what's going to be appearing here on the screens once it gets lit up. Can you still see?
Okay.
I'm actually feeling pretty under the weather, so I'm just going to sit, if you don't mind, and we'll just follow along, and then the people who could see the screens can see the screens, and if anyone's got any questions, you know, feel free to, I don't want to get in anyone's way of standing and pointing around too. So, again, this is the presentation for our 2018 budget. We're going to go over the calendar, some changes that have been made since the last time we talked about this. We're going to look at some of the recent general fund revenues and expenditures, the capital projects plan, bus replacement plan, the estimated funds to be raised, what the budget amounts are, and we'll give the board a little history of the tax rate for the school district. So here we are on September 5th. After we get done talking today, I will seek your permission to advertise the budget amounts and the estimated levies and the capital projects plan and the bus replacement plan. Upon your approval, those will be in the newspaper on Thursday in both the Times and the Post-Tribune. We will then have a public hearing at our next regularly scheduled board meeting here. And then we will formally adopt the calendar year 2018 budget at the October 9th board meeting. Just want to go, before we get too deep into this, is just kind of remind the board of what some of the terms are that I'm going to use this evening. Just, you know, it could be confusing. First one is the budget. When we say what the budget amount is or what the appropriation is, that's the amount of money that the state approves for us to spend from a particular fund in a year. Tax levy is the amount of money that comes from the taxpayers as part of their property tax payments, and that's used to finance a particular fund. And the tax rate is what is applied to the assessed valuation to raise the dollars, to raise the levy to fund the fund. Just to familiarize everyone who's here in the audience, we have about 5 different funds that we advertise for the budget. We have the general fund is our main operating fund of the school district. We pay for the salaries, benefits, most of our utilities, insurance, and supplies. It's about a $60 million a year fund, and there is no local taxes that are involved in that. It is all revenue controlled by the state, mainly through our ADM count, which will be coming up here next Friday. We also then have our debt service funds. We have actually 4 different debt service funds, and this pays for our borrowings that we have done, either bond issues, loans, tax warrants. What's important to note here is that the amount that comes in is the exact amount that goes out for the year. It's just based on what our need are for those debt payments for the calendar year. Our capital projects fund, also referred to as CPF, pays for our building upkeep, maintenance, most of our technology costs, and some small capital improvements at the building level. We can't really do large projects, as you will see from the detail we'll get to here in a little bit. And as we've told the board many times, that about 80% of that money is what we call fixed costs, in the sense that it pays for the wages and salaries and wages of our maintenance department, of our tech department, our software licenses. We also have to pay for our copy machines, our elevator inspections, our fire inspections. So those are things that we have to earmark money for every single year, and then we back all those out, and then we see how much money do we have left to actually do things in our buildings. Transportation fund is for the cost attributed with transporting students to and from school. It not only includes the bus drivers, but the aides, the mechanics, and the office staff there. And then we have the bus replacement fund, which, as you can guess, is for the purchase of new buses. We received a little history here. We received our 2017 budget on January 23rd. This is now the 7th year in a row we've received a budget by March. The DLGF has really made an effort and done a great job to get those back on schedule, where for a while there, I'm dating myself, we were getting those budgets late in the middle and toward the end of the calendar year. Now the push is to get the budgets to governmental units by December 31st of this year. So they're doing a really good job there down at the DLGF. Our 2017 net assessed value is just under $3.8 billion, and for our referendum debt service fund, it is just over $4.2 billion. The difference is there, and I'll talk about it here in just a second, is when it comes to what are called the TIF districts that are earmarked as redevelopment properties within the district. If your property is in that TIF district, as part of the incentive for developing that area, the taxes are frozen and you don't pay the higher amount. It encourages development there. So those values of what that increase in those property tax values are does not go on the tax rolls. And in essence, there's the net amount. So when we're figuring our budget amounts, it's all against that net, that lower amount, except for referendum funds, either in operating or the debt service like we have. The legislator has indicated that you can apply that to the higher AV there, which means it comes in at a lower rate for your need. Our AV did decrease by about $27 million from last year to this year. But interestingly, the overall gross AV actually increased by $3 million. So it just shows that TIF districts are becoming popular redevelopment mechanisms for the Tri-Town area. They are great things to bring in redevelopment. I think in St. John, they've pretty much designated that entire 41. And on one hand, it's good because it'll bring development there potentially. But we may not see the benefits of that immediately because of the tax values so much won't increase. But it will help us in our referendum debt service fund. This next slide kind of just shows just what I reiterated there. For the last 4 years, there has been about a $400 to $450 million difference between the value of all our assessed values and then when you take the TIF districts off. And I just kind of note there at the bottom that if those TIF properties were on the tax rolls and the capital projects rate was applied to those, our CPF fund would get around $850,000 annually in additional revenue. But it is what it is, and you know, the TIFs can go either way. One might say that, well, if an area was going to develop naturally on its own, maybe you didn't have to provide those incentives to keep them off the rolls. But and more often than not, though, it is a good way to bring redevelopment and development into an area. This was the long legislative session, as we are well aware. So I just kind of want to inform the board a little bit of what the General Assembly did for state tuition support. Now, there's many aspects of the state budget that deal with education, but this is the primary area that funds our operating. It's not one of the special grants. And you'll see here in fiscal year 18 and for fiscal year 19, the amounts did increase from the Assembly for the K-12 budget as a whole, and our amount per student has increased this year in fiscal year 18. Not really sure what fiscal year 19 is going to bring, but I would guesstimate it's probably going to be around the $50 to $60 mark increase is what the LSA, the Legislative Services Agency, is projecting for us, but I will wait until next year to see that. Currently, that $5,518 amount that we get per student ranks, I believe, 353rd out of 370 school districts within the state. So it's many of the high-performing districts like us and around the donut of Indianapolis that are there in that lower amount. So it is what it is. It's always been that way. We've actually been at the bottom before, and we manage it with the funds that we currently have available to us. Just briefly want to tell the board a little bit about some other major legislative changes affecting school finance in the last session. The one is House Enrolled Act 1009. This will take effect January 1st of 2019, which really takes effect for someone like me a year from now, because when I'm presenting the 2019 budget, it's going to look different than what we're doing here tonight for 2018. And in essence, this is the House Enrolled Act that eliminates the general fund and replaces it with what is going to be called the education fund. And then our CPF, transportation, and bus replacement funds are going to be merged into what's called the operations fund. And then in addition to that, some of our expenditures that are currently in the general fund, for example, custodial, central office, school board, those are not considered educational in nature. They're more considered overhead, and those will be moving to the operations fund as well. It's about 20% of our budget, so we will be following the money, and we will have to do transfers periodically to move funds from the education fund to this new operations fund. If you recall, I was asked by Denny Costerison, the executive director of IASBO, to be on the 1009 committee that he put together, and we met about 2 weeks ago with DLGF, Department of Ed, Board of Accounts, and a person from the state legislator's office to kind of work through some of the intangibles or some of the little things that we see could be tricky issues on how this is going to merge. One thing is you'll see that currently the transportation fund, the bus fund, and the CPF fund are all they're all funded differently, and how much you get for each fund is different. So just by combining them, the question is, well, in the future, is the DLGF still going to do 3 separate calculations and then combine them, or which rules are they going to play by? So little things like that we're working with them now. Hopefully have all those answers by the spring so we can appropriately train my peers in the spring for their upcoming budget next summer.
refresh my memory, why did they want these changes and why did we come up with 1009? What was the purpose of this?
It's being said that it gives more local control here to the local units, that in essence, after the first year or two, we will get a single budget amount for this operations fund, and it'll be us to determine how much is spent on transportation, how much is spent on bus, and how much is spent on capital projects. So on that hand, it could, you know, we're always asking for more local control, but now what I don't like about it is now that all hands are going for the same pot, where each previously it was all, okay, this is how much we have for this, and this is how much we have for that. So we have a great relationship with our directors here, and working amongst ourselves and what our actual needs are. I think we're going to have a decent handle on it, but I'm not saying that's going to speak for every school district in the state. So that was the main, that's how it is being touted. I was initially a little skeptical of that, but I haven't seen anything up until this point to sway me that it's going to be a negative. Once we get through the first year of some of the, like I said, some of the transition issues, I think we're going to be okay. So the next major change was part of the main budget bill, 1001, is that up until this point, there was the September count for ADM, and then there was a second count in February. And previously, for the last 3-4 years, the February count determined how much funding you got to operate for January through June, and which inevitably hurt school districts like us because we have a high amount of people who graduate in December, and then they're no longer enrolled in February, and hence we get less money, even though you're not going to reduce your staff or your expenditures in the middle of the school year. So they finally listened, and they've decided to resort back and have only one count. There will still be a February count for statistical purposes, and who knows what they'll ever do in the future, so they can still have that data. But it will no longer be used in determining tuition support. So we are proud of that, or happy with that. And then the last one I just noted was Senate Enrolled Act 409, and this modified the dates in which collective bargaining can actually take place with the bargaining unit. We used to be able to start collectively bargaining, I believe, August 1st, and now we can't officially do that until September 15th. So it pushed it back a bit, but we're okay. We met with our teachers union accordingly. So before I go in, any questions up to this point? Okay. On this next slide, I just kind of give the board an overview of how we've operated as a school district for the past 8-10 years or so. I'm not going to go into all the details because you've seen most of these prior years before. If you just look at the bottom, the district was not operating very well for many years. In 2012, we had the cuts, and then we started operating much better. But as then you will see, starting in fiscal year 14 through now, we've decreased about $900,000 a year to operating more at the margin. And in fiscal year 17, the 16-17 school year, if you look at our financials, it looks as if we overspent by almost $1.7 million. But as we've talked to the board already, there were 27 payrolls that fell within that time frame, which really added about almost $1.5 million of additional expenditures on June 30th that wouldn't have normally occurred until July or August. If we back that out, we would have overspent by about $216,000, which was going into the last year. We knew we were going to overspend a little bit and cut into our cash balances a little bit. But now we're at that point where we are beginning to operate in the red a bit. So we will see how 2018 works. I didn't want to give you any projections because I'm going to want to wait till after ADM count next week so we get better handle on where that actual funding sources are going to be. So, okay. Next, I want to talk about the capital projects plan. This is where we go through and inform the board of what we intend to do in each of our buildings next year. Again, this is just a plan. Things happen, things come up that sometimes make us have to veer away from the plan. But as we sit here on September 5th, this is where Bill and I have talked a little bit, and this is mainly Bill works with our school principals and the head custodians, and as you know, he is at our buildings quite often and looking to see, what improvements and upkeep we can do. The first section here where it says administrative corporation wide, these is where we talk about some of those fixed costs that I talked about. They're not things to go on for us here at administration, but they are things that are general that affect all buildings. Again, our technology, our maintenance. We do allocate about $300,000 a year just for asphalt and roof patchwork. It's not to replace a roof, but it's to do just small things like that. And then we'll start getting into each of the individual schools, and you'll see that at each school, with varying amounts of dollars, we do have what we call an upkeep allowance, and this is just money that we budget for that school for just to keep the place up and running, just small repairs here and there. And then, except for at the high school in Protzman, we also give each school an allocation to upgrade their desks and chairs each year. Desks and chairs wear out and get broken, and so we try to give them money so they can replace those as need be. So at the high school, in addition to the regular upkeep allowance, we are looking to add bleachers and wall pads in the new upstairs gym area, and then also to repair the door F entry here at our administrative entrance. So we've had some door issues there here recently. At Grimmer, we're looking, in addition to the regular allowance for upkeep and desks, we're looking to do approximately $200,000 of roof replacements. That won't cover the whole roof, but it will be the first step of making some changes there. At Kaler, as you know, we started paving the parking lot there this year, and we would like to finish the other side of Kaler and get that complete. At Clark, we're looking to convert the old playground area into parking lot. It would open up some more parking space where that playground is not really utilized much anymore.
Fifth grade was there.
Yep.
Or still,
At Bibbage, we have a handful of items listed. We're looking to replace the HVAC unit in the 4th grade wing, rebuild the air handler in the kitchen area, paint and remove the carpet from the library, similar to maybe what we did at Piper this year, paint the gym, and to paint the exterior light poles. At Holman, Holman was one of the schools where we've recently put in the new floor and bleachers, as if you recall from Mr. Ledger's picture show that from the last board meeting. So then the next step to that is to replace the stage curtains and the sound system in the gym. So we're looking to do that at Holman, and you'll see that again further down for some other schools. At Coling, we're going to continue with the carpet replacement that we've been implementing throughout most of our elementary schools. So allocating some money for that, replace the gym bleachers there, the sound system, and the stage curtain as well. At Piper, this might be the last year for carpet replacement there. We're pretty close to that. And then looking to also, again, replace the sound system, replace the stage curtains, and also replace the 2 basketball backboards that are there at Piper. At Protzman, it's still relatively new, not much to do there. We don't have to give them a budget for desks and chairs because they're still pretty good shape. But Bill has indicated that the loading dock wall can really be painted. It was something that has worn already here over time, so we've allocated some dollars for that. At Watson, we want to paint and patch the exterior soffit and then also paint the gym. And down at the transportation area, we're looking at clear some ground clearing around the facility, mainly on the south side, and that open grassy area, kind of pretty it up a little bit as well. So Before I move on to the bus replacement plan, any questions or comments regarding capital projects plan, as I say, for 2018?
I didn't see anything in here on Grimmer and Watson and that chaotic drop off. Will that be down the road or?
Well, if, Dr. Baracos, we've talked a little bit about we have that open area, that grassy area there, and if would we somehow utilize that, but something like that would be rather costly that we could not do here and fit into the capital projects plan. We would probably have to do a geo bond for that. We haven't dove too much into that so far as in cost yet, just because I'm focusing on this. And it's too big of a project to just kind of build into here.
Absolutely,
So-
just so it's still on the
It's not,
parking block.
no matter what we do with 2 schools on that property, we're not going to speed it up for the people dropping children off.
I don't think it's so much the speed as
We won't
it's
speed
just
it
all
up.
the chaos and the
Right.
confusion. Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with speed, but
What does it have to do with?
just the chaos and confusion, and
I think that chaos is caused by people being in too big of a rush.
you're right, it is.
They have to accept the fact that, once upon a time, it was the decision made to put those two schools on the same property right next to each other.
Mhm.
And as those schools grow, and as fewer people want to ride the bus, which is also a problem there,
Right.
people who could ride the bus choose not to, adding to the congestion.
Right.
People just have to be more patient.
Yeah, I know. But they just are not, are they?
Well, and the extra safety measures slowed it down further,
Did you?
But-
Did it?
but it made it more safe, which was the goal when we worked in conjunction with the Sherwood PD.
Is that, we go behind the school now, is that correct? Okay. I haven't seen that arrival and dismissal, but I know it was pretty bad in my days working for Lake Central, so just curiosity on that one. No, I just wanted to know the ADM count, are we still pretty solid with our numbers?
We'll know in about 10 days.
Okay,
And
that's
I
when
think
you're.
we're in pretty good shape, but until you actually run those numbers on that final day and you have bodies and seats.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Anybody sign up today?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope a few things.
Okay, with that, I will move on to the bus replacement plan. We are required to, currently, we're required to develop a 12-year bus replacement plan. Another aspect of that 1009 bill might be reducing this to a lesser time frame, but again, we'll worry about that a year from now. So this is our schedule of when we would estimate to replace the buses in our fleet. We currently have 99 buses between our regular full passenger, 72 passenger buses, plus our special needs buses, plus our activity buses. Those are all part of the bus replacement plan. We are looking to replace approximately 10 buses next year, based on, one, what we're approved for, and two, what the cost and the bids, the quotes come in for the buses. I will just like to inform the board that, again, this is a plan, and we generate the plan based on the age of the bus, which would make the first natural sets. But we actually, when it comes to trading in buses or auctioning off buses, it's the ones that have the highest mileage or are in the worst mechanical shape. And so it may not necessarily be the oldest buses that go. Some of those older buses may have lower mileage, and we have a great mechanics there. So
What's more effective for us, to trade them in or to auction them off?
it's probably to trade it in, although we don't get if you come out to the auction, you never know who's going to show up and what we're going to get. We've been getting about $7,500, I think, for a trade per bus, but in recent years, but we don't get that much at the auction generally. So sometimes they'll let you trade in more buses than what you're buying. If we don't, if we have some excess, sometimes they don't. but it's been more advantageous for us just to trade them in, even though we don't really get that much for the bus. You know, you pay $110,000 for a new special needs bus, and
Yeah.
you get $7,000 for it on that. So, you know, we can't control that, but we go from there. So if you go to that bus replacement plan is 4 pages, and if you look at the bottom of page 4, it shows if on that left column that there are 99 buses in our fleet currently, and for 2018, the estimated cost of replacing 10 would be about $1,009,000. Of course, that is just an estimate. That won't be until the actual the bid process opens up. And then we estimate what those costs would be for future years down the road. Again, some years are higher, some years are lower, but they are generally pretty consistent except for a blimp here or there. I mean, we try not to have one year that's really high, one year that's really low, because this is a fund that the state is giving us a set amount of dollars for each year, no matter how many buses you choose to replace. So if you see a year coming up that maybe they're giving you enough money to buy 10 buses a year, and you've got a bubble coming where you need to replace 14, you need to stop piling that money because they're not giving you any extra dollars that year that you've got that blip. So we manage it accordingly, and we buy what we can. So.
Are you continuing with the big white buses?
They are part of that plan. Yeah, we
They're
still have some
probably not
time on those,
Yeah, they're
and the
probably-
mileage on those is even though they go on further distance trips, they're not doing everyday bus routes. So those are in great shape.
Good.
So.
So the ones we're replacing this year are 13 years old? That's-
They're a mixture of some that are 2002s, 2004s. So yeah, so we've gotten some great years out of those buses, which is a tribute to our transportation department
Yeah.
for keeping those running in good shape. And whenever there's an issue that they're just not comfortable with anymore, then that's where we earmark it that this is what we're going to trade. Again, it's not just based on years. So we can have a bus that we trade in may only be 6 or 8 years old. It's just that what those guys down there, since they're the ones working with those buses every day,
Yeah.
they have the best knowledge for which are the best for us to get rid of.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
any other questions so far? All right, I just want to tell the board about, in essence, our taxpayers. There are controls in place on how much we can spend out of each fund. It's not just we have an open checkbook, and you'll see here that for the general fund at the bottom, the rainy day fund, there is no tax dollars involved with those. So whatever cash you have is the cash that you can spend. You'd like to have a little cash reserve, but really, if you want to spend it all down, and you could, we choose not to operate that way. But it's just based on how much money you have, just kind of like in your own personal bank account. As we talked about, the debt service funds, you're only getting the money for what your debt needs are for that year. We have debt payment schedules, just like you may have for a mortgage or a car payment, and it works there the same as us. For capital projects, the DLGF has a 7-step formula in which they calculate a rate, and they take that rate and they times it against the assessed value. We kind of mentioned that earlier, and that's how much we get, and that's how much you can spend. And for transportation and bus, they set the levy, which again, from our earlier sizes, they tell you how much you're going to get from your taxpayers. Then they back in the formula the other way to determine what the rate is going to be based on what your assessed values are going to be. But as I said before, okay, these are 3 funds with some various ways of how those dollars are calculated. So when 1009 takes effect in January 1st, how is the DLGF going to implement that? And again, we're working with them on that because that really wasn't spelled out clearly in the legislative act, per se. So. All right, so here is where I detail all of the amounts that we're going to advertise for our budgets for 2018. This spreadsheet is called what we call the 16-line statement. As you can guess, there are 16 lines. and that's why it has the name as it does. And what this really does is you estimate what your expenditures are going to be for 2018, how much your expenditures are going to be for this 6-month period of July through December. The total, line 5 calculates the total expenditures that are going to be needed. Then you figure in how much cash you already have, how much cash you expect to have coming in between now and then how much needs to be raised from the taxpayers. And you can see general fund, if you work your way all the way down, net amount to be raised is 0 because we don't get anything from the taxpayers for general fund. But our debt service fund, our obligations for that fund continue to, they stay steady. It's just our debt obligations for 18 for out of that fund are just going to be under $4 million at $3,985,761. Our exempt debt service fund, this is for debt that was on our books prior to 2009 and which is outside of the tax caps. That's what's called the exempt fund. They're exempt from the cap. Since that had to have been on the books in 2009, that amount is steadily decreasing each year. So our obligations for those is $3,739,000. I believe there are 4 bond issues that are part of that. After 18, there will only be 2 that are left. So if we go to the next page, the next fund is our exempt retirement severance bond debt service. This is in essence our pension bonds that were done in 2004. And for those bonds, we have debt payments of $1,325,811. And then we have our referendum fund, and those debt payments are going to total $11,606,000. Moving on to capital projects, based on my estimate of what the rate probably will be and what our AV may be, we're going to advertise a budget of $8 million. I believe that to be high, but we want to protect ourselves just in case the rate comes in at a higher calculation, or if our assessed value increases a significant amount. We want to protect ourselves to make sure we advertise enough that we don't lose out any dollars that can be coming here. The last slide shows transportation, which we're advertising a budget of $5.9 million, which is consistent of what we've had for the last few years. Bus replacement is the $1,009,000, which you remember is the same number that was the bottom of that first column on the bus replacement plan. And then our rainy day fund, we have $1,350,000 in there. We do not intend to use that, but we advertise it just in case a rainy day happens and we would have to tap it. This gives us the ability to do it without having coming back to the board. On each of those, it calculates a rate, and those rates will be what we advertise. So any question on any of those before I move on? Okay. My next slide is just a little historical comparison of, since 2011, how much we have advertised as our tax rate for our respective funds, and then how much it came back as certified as. And if you just kind of look at that certified amount, you'll see in 11 and 12 we were at 61 and 55 cents, and then this referendum project came on board and our rate increased to 82 cents, up to 85, 80, 79, and we're here in 2017, our total rates were 70.92 cents. So we have been very consistent here the last 3 or 4 years. My calculation for this 2018 is we're actually going to advertise less than what we have in the last previous years, and that is a little bit because of our AV has grown, and therefore there has to be a less rate to apply to each of those funds. On the next slide is just another representation of what I just said. Except we put a nice little chart and graph at the bottom that shows, and the red line is what that assessed value has been since 2011, and as you can see, it's been pretty steady between around $3.6, $3.8 billion, and then the corresponding tax rate is shown there on the bottom. You can see the increase when the building project came on board, but we've been very consistent ever since that, if not actually going maybe slightly down a little bit. So, based on that and what we kind of talked about here, my recommendation is that we advertise the budget amounts for 2018 as follows. For the general fund, $61 million. For the regular debt service fund, $3,985,761. For the exempt debt service fund, $3,739,000. For our pension bond debt service fund, $1,325,811. For the referendum debt fund, $11,606,000. Capital projects, $8 million. Transportation, $5.9 million. Bus replacement, $1,009,000. And the rainy day fund of $1,350,000. We will also have to do, we prepared a 3-year capital projects plan that doesn't go into all the details that we outlined here earlier, but that would show approximately $8 million for 18, 8.1 for 19, 8.2 for 20, and then we have our bus replacement plan for the next 12 years with the purchase of 10 buses in 2018. As I said earlier, these will be published, the CPF plan and the bus plan would be published in the newspaper on this Thursday, the 7th. We are no longer required to publish in the newspaper the budget amounts or the estimated tax levies in the newspaper. Instead, they are uploaded into the state's Gateway public access system. And so those are all loaded in there already. It's, in essence, if the state is touting that to be the catch-all for where the public can go and get all information, then why should we have to spend the dollars to publish it in the actual newspaper again? Of course, the newspapers kind of put a little stink to that, and so a compromise was to still put the bus and the CPF plans in there. So if anything changes in the future legislatively, we'll roll with that. Again, we'll schedule to have a public hearing here for anyone in the public to make any comments of what we discussed here tonight, and then we would adopt at the following board meeting on October 9th. And here I just kind of put a picture of what that posting does look like in the Gateway system. It dictates when the public hearing is, when the adoption meeting is, and what the budget estimates are for each of the funds, and how much we think the estimated levies would be for each of those funds. And then the next 2 slides show what the notice to taxpayers for the CPF plan will be in the newspapers, and for the bus replacement plan to be there on Thursday. And with that is the last slide. So at this time, I ascertain any questions that you may have regarding the 2018 budget presentation, either the process or anything specifically.
Any questions?
I have
I have none.
I read in the paper, or I heard somewhere maybe that the assessed value for the St. John homes had skyrocketed.
I saw that story as well.
It was a township.
Yeah, I'm not sure the story behind that. I guess if you're a property owner and your assessed value goes up higher and there's a consistent rate still applied to your property, then you're going to be paying more. From my seat, if the property values are going up for all properties in our corporation, that would mean, in essence, a less rate that would need to be applied, and then maybe that would bring additional CPF dollars into us. The property values are supposed to be based on trend and market trend. Back in my younger years, there used to be an annual, or there used to be a reassessment done like every 5 or 7 years, and you would go from here to here to here. And what they try to do is kind of make it more of a step by step, that each year it gets readjusted based on home sales. How well that is done here in Lake County, I don't think so. But it is what it is. And I would like to think that if if the assessments were done closer to what the market values actually were, then maybe some of those values would be increasing, not just here, but all around. And then if the assessed values are higher, then maybe less communities, less school districts would be hitting those tax caps, and with the 1%, 2%, 3%, and some people might be losing out, will lose out on less revenue. Now, there could be many other areas of the county that could be just the opposite, that maybe there are a lot of dilapidated homes, and maybe those are being overassessed for what they really are. So, I mean, I don't really have any expertise in that, so I can't make an opinion whether or not I think we're high or low. I just know that in our district, it seems that some of those assessed values appear to be a little bit less than what the housing market might be. But, I'm not the assessor. So that's their profession and not mine. So.
So if the assessed value increases for our area, then would not the tax rate go down?
It would. That is correct.
Okay.
But we're pretty consistent here on how much our needs are per year. Our debt is, if you remember from our debt schedules, when we passed this referendum project, we had debt that was coming off the books gradually over time, but we structured the new debt so that more and more each year gets funneled toward the referendum debt. And so it makes a level debt amount in essence, for 20 years. So even though there was one that's like that exempt fund is going down, that means the referendum fund is going to go up, because that's the way we structured it in 2012.
I mean, you talk referendum fund, you're talking the building
That is
referendum.
correct. That's the only referendum.
The one from
that
2012 or whatever that was, right?
Yes. Yep,
Just
20
to
years.
make sure that I
20
understood
years.
that right.
Yep.
Okay.
And our, like I said, our transportation, our bus needs are all pretty consistent. But we're just one component of a person's tax bill. You got the
Right.
county, the local municipalities, the libraries, and so
Right.
forth. So, people can see a change in their tax rates and their tax bills on an annual basis that has nothing to do with us. And maybe it has to do with the assessed values, and maybe it has to do with different areas of government having more needs that are inconsistent each year, where we're pretty steady. So.
Any questions for Rob? All right, thank you for sharing with us, we appreciate that.
Thank you. So I would just like to.
Did we have a vote
We need to take a
on?
Yeah, I'd just like for you to bless the
We need a
permission
motion
to
and a second.
advertise and.
Move to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any questions?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and motion carries.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
For the last-
Thank you. Any public comments? All right, and board comments and consideration of future agenda items? Mr. Marshall?
I have none, thank you.
Mrs. Lesentine?
I just want to say, remember that tomorrow is the open house for the high school, right? Teacher night. And I wanted to give a shout out to Ms. Banashak at the high school level. I've received weekly newsletters about pre-calculus
Oh,
all
cool.
4 weeks, and that is really awesome for me to see, so. Not just because it's math, just because it's
Communication?
high school communications, so shout out to her.
Okay, Mr. Best, so,
I just want to say thank you, Teresa, for your update on high ability, and Sarah, yours on the class sizes as well. And I just did see your email here quickly, right after this presentation, so I did see it pop up. And also, Rob, excellent job again on the budget presentation. Thank you for that detail. That's it.
and Mrs. Hughes?
Your homecoming tickets, closes on the 11th.
We will work on
Is
that.
that through the school store?
It is.
Dr. Ruck, I just heard on the radio today, and I don't know if it'll come to fruition, I don't know what's going on, but with the existing students that are in our country that are considered the dreamers, are we prepared to deal with that if that hits us? I mean, and that's just a question that I throw out there just for you to think about. you know, the policies, how do we do it, how do we handle it, and, you know, I've seen horror stories of members from ICE going into schools and just grabbing kids out of there. And I mentioned this before, but I just want us to be ready for that, so who knows where it's going. Mr. Freeman, would you take a message back to the high school for me? I would love to have this agenda topic in the future that helps me understand CTE, career technology, education? Is that what? And we adopted a new policy tonight, so we have the CTE, but we also have PTE, which is Pathways to Excellence, and I get confused about the difference. Is there and there is a difference?
Yes.
Okay, so I would just like some information on the CTE program and the Hammond Career Center. I would love to visit the Hammond Career Center. I don't know if we make those arrangements through you, Mrs. Castaneda. I'd like to go up and visit the facility.
Through me.
Through you, all right, perfect.
In a nutshell, if you think about the old, what used to be called vocational,
Right,
that is your CTE. There's been a shift instead of just the hands-on to go broader and just, not just the trades. So CTE is more of what you would, you know, they used to consider the vocational ed, and then the PTE is what we're doing with freshmen. It's the first level into that. It's exploring careers and technical education, getting them ready for a pathway.
all right, okay, that makes sense. So the Pathways to Excellence is more of a Lake Central initiative to get the kids ready for
Yes,
this
ma'am.
CTE where they go into the pathways. Yeah. Mrs. Talent?
Also, with the.
I can't hear you, honey.
Also, academic assistance, that allows us to have academic assistance, the PTE time. We get to have tutoring within the school day for 60 minutes twice a week, so that's really a plus.
Okay.
Like Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, I just find it really interesting, and of course, all the radio shows are talking about, you know, the workforce development and what we should be doing, and I would love to see data on placement of our students too over the years through the vocational program. Because, I mean, if you talk to Mr. Brannick, you're gonna hear that he places almost everybody up and down 41. It'd be nice if we had presentations about that and could celebrate that, because that's quite awesome. And it wouldn't be just Mr. Brannick, it would be Mr. Richardson and, who's the other guy? I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Rainwater, there's another gentleman.
Gary Gray.
Pardon me?
Very great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then within the, of course, Mrs. Talent's department and child development and art. You know, there's just so much out there that I'm not sure that we do it justice. We do a great job honoring our academic honor students, there's no doubt. But if we could put more emphasis on these other children too, it'd be pretty awesome. So on that, if you could just get that back and help me get a visit to the Hammond Career Center, that'd be great. Are we meeting on September 25th, board members? Is that for everybody okay?
Yes.
Right?
What is the time?
September 25th? You want to go 6 or 6:30?
Either one. That's
Okay, let's go 6, since we're used to that. Okay, so that'll be our next meeting, and that'll be our executive session. All right, and I think that's it for me. Go ahead, Dr. Bracco.
In terms of calendar, we're back till Monday, 2 weeks from yesterday, and we do need to have an executive session that day, and I'm curious if the board wants to continue with the board policies. Can we do that exec at 5:30 and do the work session starting at 6:15?
Fine with me, then.
I'm good.
Okay.
All right, that'll be the plan then.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Okay, call for adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.